happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring in Whitney Capitol. When we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at
Sorry, that sticker popping up right there at the end threw me completely off. Thank you, Buttsicle, for all the stickers and sparks. You were amazing. Guys, how are y'all doing today? It is Friday night, so that means it's PieRat TV time. Mimi,
your booty is mine.
Oh my goodness, it has been a long time since I've listened to that speech. That speech was from freaking almost, what, 50, 55, 60 years ago now?
Your booty is mine.
Thank you for the host, Ali. What is up, DSV? How are you doing? How is everybody's night going? A couple things. We're gonna go. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing real good. We're gonna do an hour or two of PieRat TV. Then I'm gonna take a really short break, reset everything, and then I'm gonna stream for a couple more hours, playing probably Rainbow Six or something. Have a wonderful weekend, Ali. I will miss you, since I won't be back till next Friday. And that's the reason why I'm going to stream some video games afterwards, because I'm not going to be here all week for the next week. I'm not going to be streaming for the next week. Thank you for the stickers. What else? And then, so I'll be back next Friday. We're going to do another PieRat TV next Friday. Probably a little bit of an extra stream on Friday. Saturday during the day next week, not tomorrow, during the day next week, we'll be doing a day stream, I believe, at about 1 o'clock Central Time, and then my regular 8 o'clock stream on Saturday as well. And then, let's see, I'm trying to think what else is going on. I'm looking forward to the 13th of next month, because Rebel Galaxy Outlaw comes out. So yeah, that's a little bit of housekeeping. I wanted to open up with that speech. It's something that has been running through my mind. Oh yeah, D&D a week from this Sunday. We should be good for that. But no D&D this Sunday, because I'll be gone. I'm just gonna be gone. I have a wedding to go to tomorrow, and then I will be hanging out with a friend of mine here in town for the week. So, but thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. I missed PieRat TV last week because I was sick. I was not feeling well. Really wasn't feeling well on Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday, like I was finishing, but I didn't know if I could actually have conversations with you, so I didn't want to, stream for a couple hours of just me going like this. Yeah, because that's what it would have been like. If you're new to PieRat TV, this is my political historical / opinion show that I do every week. In a couple weeks, on the 30th and 31st, so it's going to be a Tuesday and a Wednesday, we're going to be doing special PieRat TVs during the middle of the week, because the next Democratic debate will be on, and after the fun that we had the last one, I kind of want to keep doing it. I want to keep doing the debates, and I'll probably continue doing debates all the way up until next November, whenever they have them, so that way, we can discuss what they're talking about, and, you know, we can poke fun at them, and we can poke fun at ourselves, and, you know, the normal stuff. I just realized the other day that I'm eligible to become president of the United States. Just letting y'all know. I don't want to be president, though. I don't want to be a politician. Be behind the scenes, making money on the side. Come on. That's what I would like to be doing. I don't want to be in front of everybody. I'm in front of you guys enough. So I wanted to talk about racism this weekend. There's been a lot of stuff going on that has been in the forefront of the news, forefront of Twitter, and it's been really interesting to see things, and just looking, because I haven't talked about any of it on Twitter. I try not to get into weird stuff. What's up, Vetter? How are you doing, my man? I try not to get into too much craziness on Twitter, especially my PieRatKing Twitter, unless there's something that I really like, something I feel like I can, you know, throw out there to help with the discussion and not take away from it. Because sometimes, you know, we sit there and we're like, God, that person is stupid. Why would they say something like that? And you kind of want to say, hey, you're stupid. But I try not to do that, because I try to actually have a discussion with people instead of arguments. I am doing great, Vetter. I'm doing really good. I hope you're having a wonderful week. I'm looking forward to this weekend where we go and play, or I go and do some stuff with the family and then a friend that's coming into town. Let's see. First of all, I don't know if y'all have seen the craziness that's gone on with Trump. I'm not going to get into it, because I think that I've said it time and time before that he just needs to stay off Twitter and stop saying things on Twitter, because it makes him look worse. It really does. And some of the stuff he says, I'm just like, why? It's the same thing with, like, AOC, though. Like, she says something, I'm like, what? Why are you saying this? This does not help you any sense. So it's not just one side. You know, everybody. If you tweet on, you only have what, 230 characters now, 180 characters, something weird. But, like, you don't have that many characters to actually put a solid argument through. So if you don't word things right, you come off looking stupid. If you go with your first instinct, you come off looking stupid. You come off looking like a jerk, and it's just not. It's not conducive to get into those kind of discussions and say the first thing that pops in your head. Like, if you're going to make some kind of statement like that, think about what you're going to say and word it properly. But that's just me. So it's really interesting to me. Hold on, I'm looking up something. There was something I wanted to bring up, and I forgot to bring it up before stream. There, that's who I was looking for. Bam. So there was something that happened. I don't care. I'm not going to. There's something that came up this week that I think is really, really important. And it definitely has to do with freaking Twitter. Because we have this tendency of saying whatever the hell we want on Twitter. We don't realize, and social media in general, we say what we want to, or we say what's right on, the tip of our tongue, without thinking about what we're going to tweet, or post on Facebook, or post on whatever website, without thinking about how other people are going to take it, and it can impact your career. It can impact your social life, and I think a lot of us, we go straight off that first impulse to do it. We don't think about anything that, like, who you're talking to and how it can affect you later. So this happened this week. Let me pull this up. Why am I'm just not paying attention to what I'm doing. So Miss Michigan World America stripped of her title. She was crowned Miss Michigan this week, and then her title was taken away because of something she posted on Twitter. Now, this lady, she's a student at the University of Michigan, I believe. University of Michigan, named Kathy Zhu. She is a Chinese immigrant. She came over from China, came through the whole legal process, is now an American citizen, and is going to the University of Michigan. In 2016, she decided to help with the Trump campaign, and she assisted in being one of the people on the street that, you know, I don't know if y'all have ever seen like campaigners where they get people to come in, and those people go out and, you know, basically do a door by door, or they will sit at a grocery store or at a library and, you know, talk to people about their candidate and stuff like that. So she's obviously a conservative person who won this competition, and then this week somebody sent in a tweet of hers that was sent to the Miss World Association of Michigan and Illinois or something like that, and they basically stripped her of her title because of it. And so let's see some of the things that happened that she had come out, like the first incident. Here we go. The first incident dates to 2018, where Zhu went up to a Muslim Student Association booth celebrating World Hijab Day and declined to wear a hijab when prompted. She then tweeted, "There is a Try Hijab On booth at my college campus. So you're telling me that it's now a fashion accessory and not a religious thing? Or are you just trying to get women used to being oppressed under Islam?" I mean...
Out, hurry up, you better take a guess.
Thank you for the sparks. So she said this, and this is her defense. I guess she tweeted that. This is her defense. I said it was getting women used to being oppressed because there's so many women in the Middle Eastern countries that are being punished and stoned for refusing to wear a hijab, said Zhu. Nobody is talking about it in the West because all they see is everyone being at peace, but that is the beauty of America. No, it's fine, Liz. It's fine. And then the second, this is the one that I think they were more focusing on, is that she responded to somebody talking about, I think it was about the police shooting black people or something like that. She said, "Did you know the majority of black deaths are caused by other blacks? Fix the problems within your own community before blaming others." Mind you, are they insensitive? I think so. I think they're insensitive tweets, but I really need to shorten the song. Probably should change it because I'm not sponsored by Dr. Pepper. I wish I was. Anyways, what was I saying? This applies for every community. If there's a problem, fix things in your own community before lashing out at others and try to find the issue there. That is all I wanted to say. It's not a problem against black people. Obviously, I'm not racist or stuff like that. But yeah, I probably need to definitely turn it off. But no, I'm going to change it. I just need to find something appropriate that I want to put there. And mind you, they have every right to do what they want. I think the biggest problem is that there's no... It always feels like there's no balance. It's like... I don't know this company. I don't know their history of stripping titles. It was just... It was interesting to me because, honestly, both these tweets are very tame compared to what I've seen on Twitter from all sorts of people. They're not that, they're really not that, I don't know. They're not that aggressive. And the reason why I showed, the video of MLK's I Have a Dream speech is because it's interesting to me to look back and see the amount of changes that have happened since that time, since the 60s when the civil rights movement was happening, and seeing somebody like MLK, who was an amazing speaker. I haven't delved into his personal life. I know there's plenty of people that have and have criticized him on his personal life and stuff like that, but that's not my judge. That's not my job, is to judge somebody, you know, from 60 years ago based on their personal life. Like, that's okay, whatever. Things were different back then, honestly. Things have been different throughout the history of mankind, and I think that the progress we have made, and the stuff that he said, you know, he dreamt of a place where white kids and black kids could be, you know, hold hands and call each other brothers. I mean, I see that all the time now. I mean, it's since I was in high school, at least, you know. I think we've gotten to the point of where his dream was leading us to, but it's just gotten to the point where now we are regressing, and we're hyper focusing on people based on the way they look and what they're doing. And me personally, I don't understand why. I think that's the worst thing to do, is to focus on everybody's defining characters. Oh, I know it is, DSP. It's really interesting to see, look through history and see how we swing one way or the other. And you can see it a little bit in the way the people vote. I mean, we've gone, let's see, Trump is a Republican, Obama was a Democrat, Bush was a Republican, Clinton was a Democrat, Bush Sr. was Republican, Reagan was a Republican, Jimmy Carter was a Democrat. So we're always going back and forth. But then you look at the Congress on it. So we'll elect a Republican president and then fill our Congress with Democrats, or we'll elect a Democratic president and we'll fill our Congress with a bunch of Republicans. It's always been there, but it was quiet. The current climate is making it okay to bring that out. What are you talking about, Mimi? Are you talking about the fact that, you know, we're focusing too much on what I saw? Like, are we focusing too much on our individual qualities? You know, like I identify myself as a Texan first. Like, just always have. I think most Texans do, though. My cultural backgrounds kind of just define more of like what I eat for me, I guess. And also, you know, what religion I was brought up in. But because, you know, the French and Mexican cultures are highly Catholic, so I grew up in a Catholic church. I grew up in a Catholic family. So, but then, like, looking more even further back in history, as I wait for Mimi to explain what I'm. Wait. Oh, I mean, I don't think so. Like, I don't think the current climate is making it okay with open racism, because for the most part, what goes on the internet is, yeah, it was always there and it was always open, but like the internet magnifies it, and the internet kind of makes it The internet makes it more interesting because then you have people that say overtly racist things just to piss people off. The more that we become interconnected, the fact that news is 24/7 now, and that the major news networks can go anywhere in the world within a day and broadcast live news. But I don't see anything's changed though, Mimi. I really don't. Like, this is the same. The reason why I think people feel like it's being made okay is because the media is highlighting it more. As somebody who's grown up on the internet, this is stuff I've seen from people since I've been on the internet. This is stuff we've heard in video game lobbies since the first freaking, video game lobby, the internet lobby was. Like, it's not any more or any less than what it was years ago. It's just because we're now so super focused on things that we feel like there's more of it. It's the same thing with people being shot by police officers. I mean, I feel like I was lucky because I don't really feel like there was a lot of racism in my life. I mean, that I can understand, maybe, but the thing is, those people were just as open about it before. You just didn't start recognizing it until people started highlighting, oh, that's a dog whistle, or that's a culturally insensitive, that's racially insensitive. I think we tend to ignore things that we're not really like aware of. We tend to do that. And I think back to my own personal childhood growing up. Like, I made friends with the kids that were next door, and I grew up on a military base. So the people there were of all different, races. They were of all different cultures. They were of all different religions, and from all different places in the country. So to me, I guess, growing up in that sense, I was a little bit more sheltered from everything else. But when I got in high school, like, I noticed little things, but it wasn't too. I noticed it, but I noticed more as I grew up and rethought about things when I, thought about memories and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't think that people are more brazen about it because of Trump. I think people are just, they feel empowered enough to confront everybody with, and they have the anonymity of the internet. I mean, even though we have the access to find out whoever anybody is on the internet, honestly, we do. You can go in and find out whoever anybody is. No, I agree with that too. We recognize more and different kinds. I understand that, and I think a lot of people don't understand it. Like, from my point of view, this is my personal opinion. I feel like I would rather know when somebody is really racist than them hiding it. And overt racism is a lot easier to combat than covert racism. It really is. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They oh, you can't say that, so they'll just go and they'll keep it inside, and they'll do something else that'll, you're talking about right. That I can understand that. I've noticed the rise in people that I called friends because they feel brave enough to show who they really are now. All right. Okay. I can see that. but I'm also willing to bet that they already showed their true self before that. You just didn't recognize it until it was kind of pointed out to you somewhere else. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, no, they're different. The way social media has worked it is also amps up sides to attack each other, and when normally they might not. And I agree with that too. I'd rather them be more open about it, Mimi. I would rather people be more open about what they really believe. I would. I would rather them be more open about it. I would rather be able to see point out a racist because of something they've said or done than them hiding it and, you never really knowing. But when they're behind closed doors, they're thinking something completely, which you don't know what they're actually thinking. I'd rather somebody come and call me, one of the derogatory terms for somebody of my skin tone. I'd rather them tell me that. That way I can say, okay, that guy's an asshole. I think that's also part of the problem too, is that we've gotten so used to people hiding their true feelings about other people that, when people start actually expressing themselves, then we're like, oh my God, it's eye-opening. And I agree with DSV. I think the way media and social media, it helps you click up and attack, people. You get this feeling of like, and I also think that social media and media tends to take things out of context a lot easier. Like if somebody was to even just like clip one of my streams and say, oh my God, this guy is a sexist, but they don't have the full context, or this guy is a racist because he said this, they don't have the full context of what was going on at that time to make a true judgment. So when we tend to look at things, when we look at stuff that CNN says about the president, and I brought this up in the debate about how they said, oh, he said the neo-Nazis had good people and as well as bad people over there. He never said that. That was taken completely out of context and twisted because that's what they wanted to say. That's what they wanted to purport. Yes, his tweet this past week was kind of jacked up. Him telling sitting Congress people to go back to their country, yeah, it was jacked up. I don't agree with it. And I think that demanding that they go back to their country when they're American citizens, where are they going to go back to America? Like, I might not agree with Ilhan Omar, and I don't think that she is I think that there's some things about her that are very questionable. She's an American citizen. She is. So to tell her to go back to her country, I mean, like, that's saying what? Go back to the U.S.? That'd be like somebody coming to me and saying, go back to your country. I'm here. I was born and raised in the U.S. Thanks. I'm 2-3 generations removed from any other country. I think that was dumb. And, in the past couple of days, he's kind of stepped back from whatever chants were going on down in wherever his campaign was of send her back. He's kind of taken a step back from that. But we're going to continue to push this everybody's racist, because that's just the easier thing to do. To push a everybody is racist thing is easier to villainize, because it villainizes somebody else. I mean, like, I'm not going to say I'm the most culturally or racially sensitive person. And I agree, uneducated is a better word. I'm not the most culturally or racially sensitive person, because I just I poke fun at everybody. I don't care. I find humor in things that are not the, the best of things. To me, some things are funny. Now, am I going to go and call somebody the N-word, or am I going to call some, a Hispanic person, an illegal immigrant, even if I don't know who they are, no, I wouldn't do that, because it's just, that's attacking that is attacking a person based on something that they couldn't, they didn't have a choice into doing it. They didn't have a choice on where they were born. They didn't have a choice of what family they grew up in. They didn't have a choice of what color their skin is or what color their hair is. That's not. And I won't lie. I've made some very racially charged jokes in my life. I have. I made them about people that I one of the groups I belong to. Even though I belong to my own group, I think that I heard somebody say it the other day. George Carlin would not be allowed to speak ever. Ever. He's one of the best comedians to ever do the friggin' job. He would be booed straight off the stage if he came out with the material he came out with back then. Now, the same thing goes for sorry. Richard Pryor. Like those some of the, if you go back and listen to some of their old comedy routines, no matter how true they are and how in your face they are, like they wouldn't be able to say half the things they said back then. But I was going to highlight where we as people get this sense of I think a lot of us have this misunderstanding of why people are racist, why people are xenophobic. A lot of it is nurture. A lot of it is where they grew up and how they grew up and how their families, taught them and raised them. And I think that we can use nurture to change people and to make them better on interacting with other people. But honestly, some of it is inherent. Some of it is nature. Some of it is the way it is because of how we as people evolved over time. And I'm not saying that all of us are naturally racist. I think all of us are just naturally unsure of people that look different from us. And this is more of my opinion, but I think I have a strong case for it, because when you go back to the tribal days of humanity, of when we were all hunters and gatherers and we lived in small communities that lived and fought and hunted and did all of that together. They were communities made up of families that were very tight-knit. People from other places, people from other tribes were people that you didn't trust because we've always been competing for land, for food, for resources. That it's just, that's been the natural way of things, is that as we've evolved and gone from those small tribes to larger cities to larger countries, we tend to keep that very tribalistic viewpoint on our tribe is our tribe, and we need to do whatever we can to protect them and not let outsiders in, and be very unwary of outsiders because they might come and try to steal our resources. They might try to come and take our land. They might come try to take our, you know, our livelihood. And it's grown and grown and grown. And over the years, you know, over the millennia, because this has been a millennia of evolving, we've slowly chipped away at this, especially as we continue to integrate with other cultures and are especially in countries like the US, where it is just, I mean, we're still mostly white in this country, but we do have a large black population. We do have a large Hispanic population. We do have a large, you know, Asian population here in this country. And we've had to integrate together. We've had to make do with each other, and be a little bit more accepting, that I think a lot of other countries don't have, they haven't had that necessity. Even going to like places like Europe, you go to a lot of European countries, and a lot of them are, I think a lot of people misunderstand the European nations. I think we have this, as Americans, we have this view that Europe has been is a much more friendly place for outsiders. It's a much more civilized place, that they're higher thinking over there, and that the Americans, were still living in the Wild West and trying to make our way to be on that same level as Europeans. But in all honesty, I think that when it comes to acceptance of race and religion, the United States is better than Europe is with that. There's proof in this now, especially with a lot of the European nations starting to make very xenophobic laws and being very exclusive on who they let into their countries, even more so than the U.S. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the U.S. is a lot more accepting of outsiders into the country than a lot of Europe or Australia and other civilized nations. Sorry for coughing. I think that we unless you've traveled and you've gone and you've visited and lived in these countries, you don't get to see the amount of it is a xenophobia. I remember traveling through Europe, and people consistently asked me if I was Samoan or Turkish, because at that time there was a large influx of Turkish immigrants into Europe, and they'd been moving into all the different areas of Europe. And it was just really interesting to me, because living in Texas, I've never got asked if I was Samoan, ever. I never got asked if I was Turkish either. I mean, it was really just interesting to see that, for me personally. I think a lot of, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It was just, for me, it was an interesting experience to be asked if I was Turkish or Samoan, and then I'm like, no, I'm an American. It's, I'm just a dumb American over here in Europe hanging out. I don't know. I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say. Usually I'm a little bit better. What? Oh. Sorry. My mom was texting me I was reading a text message from my mom about tomorrow, about the wedding. I think as much as we've progressed, we still can do better. As much as we progressed from the 60s, from the civil rights movement, we can do better. But I think it is also counterproductive to label everybody as a racist. Because when you start to villainize people, when you start to make them the enemy, they become the enemy. They start saying, okay, fine. If you're going to call me this, if you're going to label me as a racist, and I'm not saying that people don't say racist things. They don't do racist things. They do. We do. I do. You end up saying, okay, fine. Yeah, when you start villainizing people and automatically they take even harder stances against you, and they want to combat you more. Not that they're giving into their racist tendencies but it's just because, okay, fine. We don't work with anybody anymore. Out issues. We don't want to say, hey, look, this is why I think you're wrong. No, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're a commie, you're a freaking, fascist. Like, these terms are starting to lose all sense of actual meaning. They really are. When we start using the term fascist for everybody that, leans further right than us, it becomes to where everybody's a fascist. You start calling everybody racist, everybody's a racist then. Except for you, because you have the moral high ground. I don't see myself as racist. I like people. I don't care what you look like. I'd rather judge you based on how you treat me and how you act towards others. That's how I grew up. I grew up believing in what Martin Luther King said when he said that he dreamt of a place where his kids would be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. I grew up, that's what I believe in. I still think people should be judged that way. I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you come from. I want to know that you're a good person. I want to know that you're... Oh my God, this freaking laser show. Sorry. On my Twitter is giving me a headache. I want to know that you're a good person, that you're willing to treat people well. I think we can always do better. We can always be better towards each other, but it's not it's not conducive to making places a better place if everybody's a fascist, if everybody's a Nazi, if everybody's a racist. You should discuss things out with people. Hey, dude, that joke you said, it was a little bit messed up. And this is why. People respond better to that. They do. If I ever say anything that you have a problem with, please just tell me. Please just tell me. I would rather say, hey, okay, I can understand where you're coming from. I see what you're talking about. And I also don't think that... I think that we... And I'm guilty of it too. Use our personal history and our personal experiences and make judgments based off of it without trying to see where other people are coming from. And I think that's something we need to also get better at, is trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes. I don't know. I guess I don't. Yeah, but I mean, that's just people in general. I'm guilty of that. I'm a horrible listener. I'm just letting y'all know. I'm a better talker than I'm a listener. I have a tendency of... Yeah. Showing is definitely a better thing, too. And I think that's another thing that bothers me a lot, is that... what was it? What was it? Case in point, my old man was a typical white conservative railing against Black Lives Matter during the riots. I mean, Yeah. I think that I think that's the better way of doing it. But even then, like, and this is one thing I tried to explain to other people as well, is that even if you're seeing firsthand accounts through video of what's going on, like, you don't know, you have to take everything objectively. What's going on, Dad? How are you doing? I think that we have to look at everything objectively, and I think that is one thing that we always have. We as people have a tendency of not doing, is looking at things objectively, because we tend to look at things. We look at our news sources. We look at our, whatever sources that we get our information from, and we take that as blind truth, whether it is whether it is Fox News or whether it is CNN or MSNBC, but we take it as truth without trying to look at everything objectively. Friends that flew the Confederate flag or something like that show them what the elected officials of the South said, that it was about slavery and white supremacy. If they don't change their mind, then See, and that's DSV. That's another conversation. Finally figured out how to get on. Well, welcome. That's another thing I would like to get into, because I'll have to get into it at a different time. Because I have my own personal beliefs about and stuff that I've looked into, and because I've always been really interested in the Civil War. Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of people also, when they don't, especially people from up north, and they don't know how, they didn't grow up down south. They see that I don't like that flag. For historical reasons, I don't like the stars. I don't like the Southern Cross. And I'll get into it, because it does have a connotation towards certain groups of individuals for being used for there's racial undertones there, and I understand that. My big issue with the Southern Cross is that it's not the Confederate flag. Everybody thinks it's the Confederate flag because they're all morons. The Southern Cross was actually the battle flag for the Virginian Army, and was adopted by the KKK later on as one of their symbols. So when I see the Southern Cross, I'm just thinking, you people are idiots. Why? I don't understand. Like, are you from Virginia? Like, why do you have that flag? Well, yeah, but again, it was the Virginian Army battle flag that got adopted by other groups, and it always makes me laugh. Since I've been in high school and later, seeing it makes me laugh, because it's everybody calls it the Confederate flag. It's not the Confederate flag. It's the Southern Cross. It was the battle flag of the Virginian Army. It was never the official flag of the Confederate States of America. And as a part of one of their last, like, 2 flags they did. I mean, they went through, I think, 6 flags. The one that was the main flag for the longest, and is usually seen by historians as the official flag, is the Stars and Bars. It's the 2 red stripes with the white stripe in the middle, and then the circle of 13 stars on a blue field. That is the more accepted Confederate flag, and it's the one that's used when representing the Confederates when you're looking at it on, like, say, Six Flags of Texas, or looking at official historical places. They usually fly that flag over flying the Stars and Bars, because again, the Stars and Bars was never an official flag. And the reason why they didn't like the ones that did have the Southern Cross was the fact that the rest of the flag was white. I don't know. It was a really interesting time. Like, the Civil War is a really interesting thing to really delve into. It's something I've enjoyed reading a lot on. And mostly because that was a huge turning point for this country. You had two major groups of individuals with two different cultures, basically, and it's still very prevalent today. And I think a lot of people see Americans as one giant culture, but we're not. We're more like 5 different cultures all slammed into one country, because it's for the same reason that a lot of, Texans, when they hear somebody from up north, they're automatically calling them Yankees, because they're different. They're a different person. They're not the same group of individuals. And it goes the same for somebody from California. Like, we all have this mental image of somebody from California, the way they act, the way they present themselves, the way that they look, and I think that's just, again, part of the tribalism left over from generations and generations and generations that we've continued to keep, even though we're so much more integrated and we're so much more interconnected nowadays. And it's always been really interesting to me, because, like, growing up, my dad is white, my mom is Hispanic, and so I never, like, whenever I wanted to hear about the civil rights movement and what was going on prior to that, I always went to my grandmother, my abuelita, and I would talk to her about stuff that she had to go through. And, like, talking to her, it was really interesting to see, like, her own experiences. Like, the reason why I don't speak a lot of Spanish is all her fault. It's all her fault and all my mom's fault. I blame them both. That the reason I don't speak any Spanish. But it has a lot to do with the fact that when she was growing up and going to school, she would get punished for speaking Spanish. So she feared that if her kids learned Spanish, that they would be punished for it too. So my mom never really, like, my mom can understand Spanish, but she can't speak it. And I never learned anything. The only Spanish I ever learned was from going to Spanish class in high school and college. Man, I wish I would have grown up in a Spanish family. That would have been very advantageous nowadays, especially looking for jobs where I can say, hey, yeah, I'm bilingual. And then I can understand, when people are talking smack about me behind my back. But it's really interesting to hear those stories, and to hear about, like, my aunt and when I was talking to my mom about this actually the other day, we were talking about busing, because I brought it up because Kamala Harris had talked about it at the Democratic debate about busing with the forced integration of students and forcing them to go to schools outside of their areas, so they would have to hop on these buses, go across town, and go to school in a different area. And I was talking with my mom about it because she was telling me how her dad got so mad because they were busing her daughter across town. I know it's never too late to learn. Maybe I'll learn some Spanish. That her dad had gotten so mad because they were purposely, he grew up in East Austin, My mom's side of the family, they came from the poor side of Austin, and my grandfather worked really hard to build to basically build up his life to be successful enough to move out of the poor side of town. And so they got a house on the richer side of town, and their kids were going to go to nice white kids schools, and they were going to get good educations and stuff like that. And then they forced one of his daughters to go to be bused back to East Austin, where they left because he wanted to give his kids this better opportunity. And it's a really interesting anecdote to hear from my mom and from my grandfather about the fact that he'd worked so hard to get out of that neighborhood, and then basically the government was forcing his kids to go back to that neighborhood. And I don't. It's like, this is more of my experience of hearing from them and getting to hear their stories about growing up in this country before and then right after the civil rights movement. Because like I said, growing up in the 80s and the 90s on a military installation, I didn't see any of these things. They never affected me. I was friends with whoever lived near me. Like, I remember the kid that lived next to us in Fort Hood was, I think, like 2 or 3 years older than me. But he was the only kid in the area that I became friends with because he lived right next door. And the kids that were up the hill behind us too. And then when we moved to Japan, like, there was, my best friend lived here, and then Kyle lived here, and that was like my group of friends. And then the 1 or 2 kids I was in school with that I made friends with. Like, it was just interesting because I feel like I never noticed, like, I don't know, I just never noticed people's skin color. Not until I think I was in high school, really. Maybe junior high. Like, there's something I never felt like I had to deal with. And I feel like when I was in high school, I heard things, and nothing like was ever really directed at me. I did notice certain things, especially like going into. I worked at Saks Fifth Avenue in high school, and I went to a different Saks Fifth Avenue, and I noticed that the employees kind of kept an eye on me the entire time I was going through the store, even though it was a completely different Saks Fifth Avenue that I was at, that I worked at. And that was something I did notice, but I was just like, if they want to waste their time staring at me, I'm not going to steal anything. It's just, that's their own time and effort that they have to put into this. It never made me, I guess it never made me feel uncomfortable. I don't know. And like, I've heard people have called me all sorts of names. And maybe I'm just better at dealing with that kind of stuff, and internalizing it and just letting stuff roll off my back. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I've said some culturally insensitive things and some racially insensitive things. Some of them out of jest because jokes are funny and they're meant to push. They're meant to push those limits of comfortability. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I will say that DSV, what you're saying is very interesting to me. The way that you view the flag, the Southern Cross flag, and like, I never viewed it as that growing up. When I was in junior high, it was just something. It was something the rednecks and the shit kickers would have on their binders and stuff like that. And I was friends with most of those people, so it never clicked to me. Yeah, the Dukes of Hazzard, Leonard Skinner, like, it was something. To me, it was nothing. It was people, being proud of where they came from. Whatever, it didn't bother me. Shoot, I remember this freaking this kid. Oh, what was his name? There was this black kid who had the biggest freaking Southern Cross belt buckle. Just remember him wearing it, and it like, to look at it now, I'm like, man, like, how would he be treated wearing that thing nowadays? Like I said, we should progress. We should grow up. Well, I mean, DSV to be to be completely honest, a lot of that had to deal with the fact that the majority of the politicians that ran the southern states after the Civil War during the Reconstruction were all Northerners. I mean, if you look at, like, okay, you look at a lot of the politicians. Well, give me the article, DSV. I'll read it. I'm going to tell you for that the majority of the people during the late 1800s that ran the South were Northerners. They were all carpetbaggers. There's a reason why there's still that disdain for certain politicians in the South. I'm not going to deny that a lot of it came about during the segregation and era. Of course not, because a lot of it did. Yeah. Then that's, I guess, that's how I've always seen it as well. Oh yeah, no, I know that. No, my school definitely didn't. My school talked about the Civil War, what it was. And the War of a Northern Aggression is the more literal comment about it, DSB. I mean, we can get into the Civil War right now. I will talk about it all day long. I will totally talk about the Civil War all day long. Because I've had this discussion with my father as well, is why I'm not a big fan of Abraham Lincoln. I'm not the biggest fan of Abraham Lincoln. I think a lot of people, and I've talked about it on here before, that we idolize Abraham Lincoln for preserving the Union, which would probably be the more beneficial outcome to the Civil War. Yeah. Oh, I know. The state seceded because they were afraid that the slavery was going to be taken away from them. That's not where the argument comes from, DSV. They also had the constitutional right to secede from the United States. There's also a reason why Lincoln didn't emancipate the slaves until the very end of the Civil War. Because he didn't want to lose the small amount of Southern support. And I also tell you that a lot of the Southerners, the majority of the Southerners that fought in the Civil War, were not slave owners. The majority of Southerners weren't slave owners. And they didn't care about slaves because they couldn't afford them because they were expensive. I won't the Southern states seceded from the Union because they were afraid that that the slavery was going to be ended by the northern states. Again, this goes back. I don't know, raping and pillaging the entire South, burning, and murdering and destroying the livelihoods of innocent individuals. That's pretty bad. And that was all signed off on by Mr. Lincoln himself. It's not. Here's the thing about it is, slavery did not become profitable until the cotton gin. So if we didn't have the cotton gin, we wouldn't have had slavery last as long. So we can all blame Eli Whitney for the Civil War. I mean, they were free blacks fighting for the Union. Here's the difference. To me, there's always been a difference. To me, there's always been a difference between a non-combatant and a person that was living out their life trying to make ends meet, and were just an innocent civilian. Somebody who is a combatant knows the risks and is willing to accept the risk of death and maiming and harm. While somebody who's just living in their house and hoping that their brother or their nephew or their father comes home shouldn't fear for their lives. Yeah, no, and they did. Here, DSV, there was, there was a regiment of Hispanic Texans that fought for the Confederate side. There's a whole regiment. The Civil War is much more than just slavery, and a lot of people they focus on the slavery. They focus on the bad side, not the bad side, but the slavery aspect, because it's easier to demonize slavery because we all agree it's not right. We all agree that slavery is not right. We can all agree that imposing slavery on somebody based on the color of their skin is especially not right. And then that we can all agree that to believe that we are better than another person because of the way we look and because of the luck of the draw, being born to somebody who happens to have certain physical features, is not right. It just isn't. But it makes it easier to say, look, the southern states had no cause for the revolution because they were slave owners. Well, let me finish my point first, DSV. So it's easier to say they had no cause because they were slave owners and because the Northerners were all hunky dory and they were not slave owners, when there were people that did other things up north that because they had the ability to. They had their own slaves, but they weren't black and they weren't sitting in, chains. They were just strapped to freaking machinery in a factory. And most of them were children. So we've gone through all these years of looking at the Civil War as the liberators versus the oppressors, when it's much more complex than that. There was a lot of issues that the southern states also had with the northern states that made them realize, look, we need out. We don't want to be a part of this agreement. And, you know, they weren't allowed to make individual deals with European nations to sell their cotton or their other agricultural goods, because they had to go through the heavier populated northern states to make those trade deals. So they felt misrepresented, and they weren't, but that's how they felt at the time. And they felt also that the Northerners didn't understand their lives because they lived in the North and they had their own idea of what life is. Well, yeah. But the Northerners thought the whites were supreme as well. Like, this is the thing. Everybody in the United States, 90% of the people in the United States, thought that the whites were better than blacks. Abraham Lincoln thought so much that he wanted to deport all the freed slaves after the Civil War was over. He just believed that that slaves were not a good idea, like, at all. He just didn't want them at all, which I agree with. I will agree. Slavery is bad. It's not a good thing. I mean, but they did. That was what the first revolution was basically about. Was they wanted to be, you know, their own people. They thought they were better than the Brits. They thought they were better than the Native Americans. Like, white supremacy has been a thing in this country for years before the Civil War. Everybody, the majority of the Eurocentric ideal is based off of the supremacy of white people. And honestly, it wasn't. I will say the Civil War was a turning point for that we started to actually understand that everybody is very, very much alike, and that there's not enough differences to say that one group of people is better. I will agree with you that, and I'm going to agree that the Civil War had to happen. But my biggest problem with the whole thing. No, Dixiecrats were not Northerners. What I'm saying is the people before the Dixiecrats were Northerners. The Carpetbaggers after the Reconstruction, they were Northerners. Because everybody in the South was dead. They'd all had their houses burned down, their fields burned down. Most of them were in shambles. And I'm saying they didn't. DSP, I understand that. I understand they didn't adopt it. Of course they're not going to adopt it. They're all Northerners. That's why I'm saying it wasn't until the Dixiecrats happened in the 30s and 40s for it to be adopted again. I'm not excusing them for it. I'm just saying that that's why there was this resurgence. It's because that was the time that a lot of the Northerners stopped running for office down in the South, because a Northerner's not going to go and put a Southern symbol up on their desk to say, hey, look at me, I'm like one of you guys, because they're not. I also agree, South Carolina and freaking changing their flag, that was based off of trying to show their feelings towards their history. I understand it. I'm not going to disagree with you there, and I'm not going to disagree with you that it was a resurgence of what they'd always felt. But I feel like that the ignoring the facts that it became so prevalent in politics and that so late, ignoring the fact that the Northerners were running most of the Southern politics between that time period is doing a disservice to why it became so prevalent at that certain time. Now I want to see what the hold on. Yeah. Of course they did. Because again, tribalism, it's always going to be there. There was a disdain for Northerners, and there's always going to be a disdain for Northerners in the South until we stop looking at each other like we're different people. I'm just looking at something. I think that's wrong. Oh, dude, give me the freaking 70s any day of the week. I mean, we are different people, and we're always going to have that differences based on geography. I don't always hate, Northerners. Of course, Ultimate Team. I'm honestly, DSV, I'm glad you came in and we're having this conversation. It's an interesting conversation to have, because I think a lot of, I think it shows the difference between the groups of people in this country. Like I said, and what Crawdad said, I've never seen the Southern Cross as a symbol of hate. I've always seen it as something something Southern. And it's interesting to see what other people say. And I've talked to all sorts of people from all over the place about it. I don't care for the flag anymore. But most of that has to do with, again, that particular flag was never the official flag of the Confederate States of America, so it always bothers me seeing it. Yes, it was a part of two of the flags, but it wasn't, that wasn't the lone part of it. So I've never been a big fan of it. It's been nothing to me. It's like somebody flying a freaking Washington State flag. Okay. It just has never triggered that. And then maybe that's something. No, and I get it. And like I said, maybe it's something I've just never had to deal with in that sense. But again, I don't. It's just always been that way for me. But I understand why other people see it that way. And I understand it, and I can understand both sides of it. and that doesn't bother me. And I can say, okay, look, maybe we should have it. Yeah. But I'm also not a big fan of ripping down, I have a problem with them ripping down statues of the Confederate generals, in the sense that they've been doing it. Because again, me being a history nerd and me enjoying history, I would rather those statues be, take them out of the public space, put them into a museum. Oh yeah. The people not knowing about history is one of the problems with history, is because they find it boring, and I think a lot of that has to do with the way that we've always taught history. One of my favorite history professors, he made it very clear. He was like, when you start to look at history in a sense of why things happen and how things happen and what were the outcomes, instead of this is when it happened, this is when it happened, this is when it happened, you get to understand and actually enjoy history. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, though, DSV, most of those statues, they're not being upkept. Like, they're just there. I mean, that's most statues in this country. They're just there. Oh, no, they were. And that's one of the other things, is like, when people were talking about renaming the Lee Hall in West Point. And then they were talking about, like, oh, he was a traitor, he went to go fight for the Confederates, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, he was also one of the top graduates from that university. He was also one of the, he was also a great tactician for the most part. Though he did make a big mistake in Gettysburg. And he was also, other than the fact that he felt like he had to go and he actually didn't want to join the Confederates. He didn't do it until he felt like an obligation to go fight for Virginia. Yeah, the early 1900s. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good graphic, though. And like I said, there's your timeline right there, DSP. That also tells you, that the majority of the people that they're okay. Here, I'm looking at this right now, and I'm looking at this timeline. I'll show you guys. Hold on, let me pull it up. So this is the timeline of the Confederate symbols in the United States going on in schools and stuff like that. From 1861, which in 1865 is about where I'd start, and going all the way. You notice the amount of time between the end of the Civil War and this giant spike right here, DSV. And this is always one of my, like, the weird things I notice about timelines. All right, that is a little bit over 40 years, correct? From 65 till 1905. Think about when these people that voted for this stuff were born. And the people that pushed all this stuff were born. They were born during or after the Civil War, hearing romanticized stories from their father and their grandfather who fought for the for the Confederates. Like, that's what this is telling me as well. Is that it's not so much I don't think it's so much of a spike in racism as much as these people that were around this time making these decisions remember growing up listening to romanticized stories from their grandparents and their parents of the Civil War. So, like, I remember one of the few memories I have of my great grandfather who served in World War II, was listening to some of the stories about World War II from him, and I just always had this, and I was really young at this time, so I always had like this grandiose view of my great grandfather fighting Germans in Germany at the time. And even as an adult, like, it's still like when I think about him, other than thinking about him sitting in his chair smoking a cigarette and talking to us, while my great grandmother was making tortillas in the kitchen, it was just like, this guy fought Germans during World War II, and I always had like this interesting, like, heroic viewpoint of him, and I think that's what causes a lot of this right here. Like I said, 45 years since the end, or 40 years after the end of the Civil War, these are the kids and the grandkids of people who fought during it, so they have a romanticized, and I think that's what's more interesting to me than the fact that it's like, oh, there was this giant spike of Confederate symbols during the early 1900s. Well, because of all the race issues that were going on after. Because, like, you look down here, and then there's a little bit of a spike down here during the Civil Rights Act, which, again, this area right here is the more interesting part than down here. But that's just for me. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's just something I've noticed. Although, are these individual schools? If these are like individuals, that's not a lot, actually. I mean, black people didn't have any power back then, though. It was the, like, Jim Crow era. But that wasn't just in the South. That was all over the place, man. Like, we focus a lot on the South and how racist the South is. Oh yeah, the NAACP being founded. Yeah. What was it? And what's really also interesting is that the KKK almost died out right around here, before 1915. I don't know, our history is really interesting to look at. Our history, the way that we've treated people in our history, the way that we are trying to progress towards better things is really interesting. And that's why I like history. And, like, dates don't matter to me. I like to know events and why they happen and why they happen and how they happen. It's kind of like the Great Depression might not have happened had we not, forced Germany into a horrible treaty after World War One. I don't know. It's really interesting. But I'm gonna end it there for this part. I'm gonna play some Rainbow Six for the rest of the stream. Oh yeah, that's another thing, DSV. It's really interesting to see, like, what actions we've taken that if they'd gone a different way, it would have changed the entirety of the world history, not just, the U.S. history. Had FDR had his wish and we joined the World War II at the beginning, like, how many more Americans would have lost their lives? or how long the war would have lasted. Like, I don't know. It's to think about the alternate history lines. Like that's I enjoy alternate history books for that reason too. But I'm gonna end PieRat TV right now with this. I'm going to, like I said, I'm gonna play Rainbow Six for a couple hours. I just wanted to, I want to get as much time streaming as I can. Thank you guys for hanging out. DSV, thank you for having a fun conversation tonight. Like I said, next Friday, don't know what we're going to be talking about, but on the 30th and 31st, we're going to be live streaming the Democratic debates. We're going to talk about how they answer things and poke fun at all of them because, you know, politicians are fun to poke fun at. It doesn't matter who they are. I even poke fun of Ron Paul, and I really enjoy Ron Paul. And I will see you guys in a little bit. Thank you guys for watching. Again, we'll be back next Friday for another round of PieRat TV. Then the 30th and 31st, we'll be doing the Democratic debates, and that's everything I can think of. But if you're going to hang up for gaming, it'll be about like maybe 5-10 minutes before I can get the stream started back up and going again. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys later. Have a good night.